later in this review. In Constructed, I could see him being played in the Orc deck for just that reason, giving your other sweet Orcs haste or speed. The problem is that there are a couple 2-cost Orcs, I think in Blood, that just look better. I mean, Unlimited, he's a fine guy. He might see playing Constructed, but I don't think he will.
I personally think he'll be playable, like specifically in the Blood and Ruby Orc deck, because he synergizes with Orcs, of course, and there's the other guy who gives Orcs Rage. If you can ever get the two of those out together, that's pretty cool. I mean, a guy suddenly appearing on the board with whatever his base stats are, and he gains an attack, and he's swinging right away is pretty awesome. But that's really the only place I can see any use for him in Constructed. So moving on to the next card, we have Ragemonger, another Orc troop. This is a 3-mana casting cost, 2 red threshold, 3/1 creature. This one actually comes with speed, and this troop attacks each turn if able. When this troop attacks, target troop can't block this turn.
So this guy's pretty good. Oftentimes in Constructed, if any sort of slower deck is going to try and put some larger guy in the way to block your attackers if you're playing the aggressive red deck, this guy kind of prevents that. They can't just play their one big blocker and stall you. They have to play a couple different guys, and you always make the best one not be able to block. So that's pretty good. I think that, play an Orc on turns 1, 2, and then play this guy on turn 3 and attack. They have some cool blocker on turn 4. Now he doesn't even do anything. I think that's fine for Constructed, and his 3 power for 3 mana haste is acceptable. In Limited, it's kind of the same. Attacking each turn of Able is pretty bad. He'll probably get himself killed, but with 3 power, he will probably trade at least with a creature they control, since he can make any creature that's big enough to trade profitably with him not able to block him anyway.
Yeah, I think this card's pretty good. In Limited, I would definitely play a couple of these if I drafted them. What's kind of weird about him is, like, with speed and 3 power for 3 cost, he seems very aggressive, but you may want to consider holding one of these guys back as, like, waiting for a trick or something, or waiting to get them in a position where he's going to matter. Otherwise, he might just die. I mean, that said, it's probably worth it just to cast him and go for the 3 damage anyways. In Constructed, I think he's going to be really good. He'll probably appear in the mono red deck and the Orc deck, if those end up actually being decks. Another cool point with this guy is that you don't always have to make their best guy not be able to block. You can make their, like, worst throwaway creature not be able to block. So in the Diamond set, there's like this 1/1 for 1 cost, and he says whenever another creature comes into play, you gain 1 health. And we were saying that card would probably be at least reasonable against the mono red deck because it has, it's a cheap guy and it can block all these X1 creatures. So you can make something like that not be able to block, and then they are forced to consider blocking with their actually good card. Just something worth thinking about.
I agree. It's got a lot of utility potential. I think the Orc deck, might be something. It might not be the best deck, but I think it'll probably be playable. This will definitely be in there. 3 mana for 3 damage if they don't have a blocker open, or if they only have 1 creature out, is pretty useful, pretty playable. So moving on to the next card, we have Ragefire. This card is a 2 mana casting cost with 2 red threshold basic action. Deal 2 damage to target champion or troop. It has escalation, so every time this action resolves, you shuffle it back into your deck, and that number doubles for all of those cards everywhere. So you got 4 Ragefires in your deck. Every time you play one, they all hit twice as hard.
So Ragefire is, I think, one of the premier sort of powerful cards in the set. If the game goes long, you are going to win with Ragefire in your deck. It has to go quite long to guarantee that, but it does a ton of damage very quickly. Even the second Ragefire is really good, and it's pretty likely to see 2 over the course of a game if you're playing 4 in your deck in Constructed. This is also what I'm putting in as my combo win condition for all the things trying to combo out, I play Rage Fire for the win. Even without doing anything fancy with it, just drawing off the top, the card is great. It's a removal spell, and it gets bigger. In Limited, this is basically strictly better than Burn, because you can draw it again, and it does more damage next time. It is not strictly better because it's not an instant, and it does cost 2 and 2 red threshold, but if I was playing a red deck, and I had to pick between the two, I'd pick Rage Fire every time. And not only because it's probably worth $20.
Yeah, given that you're in a red deck in Limited, this card is going to be just better. I mean, the instant speed is very cool, but the fact that you spend this removal spell and then there's another removal spell in your deck is just crazy. And it's probably going to be worth some money, so that's worth mentioning too. In Constructed, this card is going to be everywhere. Every red deck is going to want to run 4 of them. Everybody who plays Constructed is going to need 4 of these. One of the top chase cards, I think.
The great thing, the really good thing about this card, even in Limited, is that like you can play it and kill their early guy, and you still know it's somewhere in your deck to come in the late game and kill their mid-sized guy or go to their face for the final damage. Or them, right. Like, it's really awesome to be able to just freely use your removal spell early and know that it's still there, hasn't really been wasted, because there's still another one in your deck.
Yeah, it's nice not being like, man, I only got 1 removal spell. Am I going to use it here? Well, I guess so. I mean, you can cast it now and then you still draw it later. Very cool.
I totally agree. This card is pretty sweet. I would draft one definitely if I was playing red. I might want to splash red for this if I was already like fairly deep in like green or something, just because this is such a cool card. I think it's a fun card. It's an exciting card, and it's obviously really good. Definitely really good in Constructed, and yes, it is legendary. So yeah, these things are going to be probably pretty hard to find. You're not going to see them too often. Like, I don't really approve of rare drafting, but I wouldn't really blame somebody for rare drafting one of these things.
I want to mention real quick on the splashing, it does have a double red threshold, making a splash pretty hard, but if you have any way to fix your mana, it's not undoable.
Alright, so the next card we're looking at is Rampaging Tarask. This is a 5 mana casting cost with 5 red threshold. So this is like a mega deep red card, like you're playing mono red here. It's a 8/1 crush speed. So this guy just shows up and slaps somebody in the face, whether they're trying to block or not.
Okay, so this card looks a lot like sort of similar statted Magic cards, like Ball Lightning or things like that. But there's a key difference. This guy doesn't go away. If they don't kill him this turn, he's going to attack next turn too. That's really important, because against, like, say, a Ball Lightning in Magic, you can just take it and then it dies. Against this guy, you cannot just take it. You have to block it with something. And because he has 8 power, that something is going to die. And he has Crush. So it's probably going to deal you 4 damage and kill your guy, or you just got to take 8 and then take 8 again next turn. The problem is just really bad. This guy is basically the red finisher for Constructed, or one of a couple. A couple different options, but he's definitely a very, very good one. In Limited, I'd play him. He's basically kill their worst guy and deal him some damage, or maybe kill a couple of their guys. Or if they randomly have no blockers, say they attack out to try and race you, he definitely is going to swing the race in your favor.
Yeah, this guy is pretty sweet. Originally, I didn't actually give him much credit, because there are a lot of cards like this in Magic, and pretty much all of them say, sacrifice this at the end of the turn. And so I kind of just assumed that he was like that. And then I read him again and found out that he doesn't actually die at the end of the turn. So that gives him a lot more potential to be, Constructed playable. I mean, worst case scenario is you're going to cast him on turn 5 or 6 or whatever. You swing in. You're pretty much guaranteed to kill their guy and deal them damage. And then in the off chance that they don't have something to block with, you're going to swing again next turn, which is pretty crazy. Limited, If I was mono red, I'd play this, but I really don't think that it's going to be realistic to draft monocolor in this set just for some reason. And then like the chance of being monocolor in red and then opening this guy, I doubt I'll ever play this in limited. But if I was mono red, I'd be happy to play him.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't first pick him like first pick, first back, and then try and go
Certainly
mono red
not.
to play him. Because they're likely to just get a worse deck with a Rampaging Tarrasque, which is cool, but your deck's going to be really bad trying to force mono red. If I was already mono red and opened Impact 3, yeah, he's obviously sweet. But I think that this guy is kind of a trap. He really puts you into a mono red deck, and I think monocolor is really hard to do in limited.
Yeah, certainly not a first pick. More likely to him in pack 3, like you said.
But again, in constructed, Ace, fantastic.
Yeah, he's pretty sweet.
I agree. I actually made a mono red deck to play around with here with the cards we printed, and he is a pretty effective finisher. But yeah, in draft, the 5 red threshold is pretty harsh. With that, we'll be moving on to a much more playable card in limited. This is Ruby Lance, 3 mana casting cost with 1 red threshold, quick action. Deal 1 damage to target troop for each red threshold you have.
So this guy, the card here, the 1 red threshold is kind of a lie, because if you only have 1 red, this card is terrible. He basically costs the same threshold that Rampaging Tarrasque does. You really want to have a bunch of red. Maybe not 5. It's fine really at 3. But as a removal spell limited, it is great. I drafted and I picked up 4 of them, and they were pretty much universally good. They would kill almost any creature the opponent would play. They get better in the late game. They're fine in the early game. There's nothing wrong with them. However, they are a terrible, terrible splash removal spell. So do not try and splash for your Ruby Lance. That's the worst thing ever. If you're playing these, you're going heavy red. And in constructed, they're basically unplayable. This is not where you want to be.
Yeah, pretty much agree. This card reminds me of a card in Magic called Quag Sickness. Quag Sickness is black, but it's basically the same thing. It's 3 mana, and it deals damage to a troop or lowers its toughness based on how many of its resource you have. It's a quality card if you're in that color, or if you're an even split, or preferably you have more Ruby than your off color. But you're never going to splash this. It's just so bad to splash. Constructed, they're just way better burn spells, like the spell Burn or Rage Fire or Burn to the Ground. Pretty much all the other red spells are better than this for constructed.
Yeah, the fact that it doesn't go to players makes it pretty bad for constructed, but that's fine for limited. I mean, again, it'll kill. Even if it's if you're off color in a 2-color deck, it's probably still okay. Even if it only deals 2 damage, it's probably all right for limited. 1 is not enough, but 2 or more, you're probably gonna get something decent with it.
Yeah, the big strike against this card is that it just doesn't hit champions or players in this case.
Yeah, which is a terrible strike in constructed and not a huge deal in limited.
Exactly.
I think the saving grace of it for limited even is that it's a quick action, so you can use it as a response or as a little combat trick if you need a little extra edge. That helps out a little.
True.
Yeah, that is cool.
So moving on to Ruby Pyromancer. Ruby Pyromancer is a 2 mana casting cost, 1 red threshold troop with 2/1 for starting stats. It has Inspire for +1 attack.
So this is really like the basis of the Inspire deck. It makes all of your guys hit harder, and it's pretty cheap. So it makes basically every card in your deck, with the exception of maybe that 1-drop Inspire guy, is going to have more power. That's really great. His base stats are fine. I would also play this guy in every red X aggro deck, even if it's not Inspire. It doesn't matter because it makes all your guys more powerful, which is fine. Yeah, I think this guy is going to be basically everywhere. Every deck with red is going to play Ruby Pyromancer because they're even good with themselves. Like the second one is a 3/1, so that's fine. In limited, basically the same deal. A 2/1 for 2 is not spectacular, but not bad. It's great with flyers. It's great with like high toughness guys, like 2/4s, whatnot. They become pretty good. I would draft them all day long. I think they'd be great. And in constructed, I expect to see 4